Looks like we're live. So, welcome everyone to the second Taqueria office hours. Today we're going to be showcasing another couple demos of new features in our product, mainly. Smart Pi. Yeah, there was some kind of weird audio loop there. I just tried resetting it. Oh, seems to be working now.
Okay.
Oh. Maybe not. Well, let's get you going, Jimmy, and we'll see if it works a little bit better for you. So Jimmy's going to give us a demo on the revamp of the Smart Pi plugin, which uses the new flow.
Okay. I'll first share my screen. Let's see. Where's my screen? Here. Right. So let me try to. So that's a tag project that's already created. I'm gonna demo by starting from getting this code snippet from the Smart Pi website. Copy. And then I will create a contract here. Let's call it smart counter.py. And I'll copy that thing here, and then I'll save it here. Okay, let's see. Okay, and yeah, that's the code. Here's the contract. Here's the test. Yeah, there's a compilation unit. And let's try to compile this thing and deploy it. Okay, so I have this file called smart counter.py. Okay, that's going to compile this thing right here. Right, so with the new workflow, it doesn't just compile the well, actually, sorry, it was a mistake. I was gonna say that it doesn't just compile the contract, but the storage as well. That's not new because Smart Pi already does that, but it just puts everything into a folder called this sort of folder called my smart contract. Here, stored value. So yeah, so when I compile this thing, it looks for a compilation target, all the compilation targets, and then it creates a folder using this name, and then it stores every artifact inside here. And so what the new workflow does is it extracts the relevant artifacts and put it in the first layer of the artifacts folder. So as you can see here, smart counter is created, and then smart counter default storage is created too. So yeah, I extract them over and then name them in such a way that it works well with the Taquito plugin, because to deploy contract without specifying storage in Taquito, you need to have a contract name, some contract name, dot default storage dot tz. So here, and then let's see. Let's try to what I'm gonna do, deploy. I'm trying to deploy. Okay. Deploy smart counter dot tz. Oops, not in the sandbox. I'm gonna deploy to GhostNet. Taking some time because it's talking to the node. So this, I didn't specify any storage value. That's because the Taquito plugin looks for this sort of naming format, and that is considered the default storage. So you can just simply compile this contract and then deploy. And let's see. Oh, now it's deployed. Let's have a look at the contract in TZKT. And as you can see here, it is created with a natural number of 12. And well, because 12 is because it says 12 here. And that comes from this variable, this value here in SmartPy. Yeah, so that's the workflow for compiling and deploying. And you could actually, let's say I have more than one compilation target. And let's say you want to change the storage value to something else. We'll deploy, we'll compile all of them. Well, not all of them, like well, SmartPy, like we have two compilation targets here. Each of them generates a separate folder here. Oh, there's another addition I added. All of these folders are hidden under this .smartpy folder. So let's see, there's smart counter, that's a contract. And then within it, these folders they represent compilation targets. So store value 2 here, that corresponds to this directory. So all the artifacts are inside. But they only copy one contract to the outer layer, which is here, and that's because it doesn't matter. Well, both compilation targets create the same contract, namely this file. As you can see, they're the same. The only difference between these two compilation targets is the storage value. So as you can see here, two storage values are created. Well, not created, but like copied over and renamed according to some naming convention. But the only relevant naming convention is default storage. That's considered the default storage by Taquito. And and another thing is the first of these compilation targets. So there's two compilation targets. The first of these, so the default storage value comes from the first compilation target. So that's why you see default storage being let me see. Oops. Being 12. And the other one is, what's this number? 10,000. Yeah. And let's see. Yep, so that's how you compile a SmartPy contract with multiple targets. So you could, so this is essentially saying I'm going to compile the SmartPy contract with two storage values. So, so now that I have these two storage values, I could deploy it with just the default storage by not specifying any storage, or I could specify storage explicitly by doing this. That's going to deploy it with this as the initial storage. By this, I mean the value inside the this file, which is where is it? Which is 10,000. And I'll show you now. It's deployed here. That's another contract that we just deploy. And the storage is 10,000. Okay, so that's compilation with the new SmartPy plugin. And the last thing I want to show is testing. Not this testing. Test SmartPy. I'm on smartcounter.py. And all tests should pass because the tests written here, and then they're supposed to pass. The assertions are correct. Like here's verifying that the stored value is actually 8. It is in fact 8, so it's passed. But let's see, I try and change to 100, which is wrong. And it's going to catch it here. Okay, call it here. It tells you what line this failure came from. It's line 36, which is correct. And that concludes the demo. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Jimmy. Our SmartPy plugin is going to continue to be under active development, and so we encourage users to install it, give it, battle test it, use it on your own projects, and then let us know what features you would like to see, what works for you and what doesn't. John,
another thing I want to mention, though, there's one last thing I want to mention. This plugin currently depends on a SmartPy binary or CLI. That's not like officially released. It was a test. It was a pre-release given to me, so just wait till next week and you'll see, this error thing. That's what the new version fixes, the error reporting. Yeah.
Great, thanks for the demo, Jimmy. John, do you have any questions about the demo? John's a SmartPy user, developer for the Talent Network, which is a decentralized pictures project. He's also a SmartPy user. Are you there, John?
Actually, everything, the workflow seemed to fit exactly the way that we do things currently. Like we have compilation targets, the test flow is great. Like it seems to be just what we would use. So I can't see any reason why we're gonna have to start using Taqueria right away. Yeah.
Awesome.
So it's where I work with. I can't really think of any specific. So once you deploy to a network, how do you set up your network? I guess I'll check into that later. But you support like the mainnet, the Tezos mainnet, and then all the other nets like the ghost nets and those kind of networks, I guess, right?
Yeah, we have the notion of an environment, and an environment can target a network, and so there's a network configuration. You get your RPC endpoints and kind of all the connection data there. Oh, yeah, I know. Given that Talent Network is a bit of a different chain, we'll be eager to make sure that it's working for you there.
Right. Excellent.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for the questions. We'll come back to a QA and discussion session after. Thanks again for the demo, Jimmy.
No worries. And by the way, just the first iteration, we'll keep improving the workflow.
Yeah, our focus is on iterating through the SmartPy developer workflow. So if anybody has friction points in your deployment or development process, please to reach out and see what we can do to make that easier for you. Great. So up next, we're going to have Ali, another developer here, who has been working on the VS Code extension. Lots of great new features there, and he's going to give a demo of using it, the VS Code extension on WSL, which has a few gotchas, as well as showcasing some of the newer features here. So I'll turn it over to you, Ali.
Hello, everyone. So we support Taqueria on Windows through WSL. So you initially need to set up WSL on Windows. which I'm probably going to share a complete end-to-end setup video for Windows, probably setting up a Windows machine and set up WSL in it separately, and then set up everything in that WSL. But for now, what I'm going to show you is that a setup that's already existing and working. For that, you need, of course, the WSL. So if I open the Windows terminal, I have Ubuntu in it, which is my default WSL distribution. And I also need a Docker desktop to be set up to use the default WSL distribution. Or if I'm not going to use the default WSL distribution, it should be enabled in here. So in VS Code, we also need the remote development extension pack, which basically installs the WSL extension. And after that, you can open a window, a VS Code window that is connected to WSL. So this is what I currently have, a window that is connected to WSL and with the Taqueria extension installed. That is what we need. It would be a separate demo to set it up. But once you do that, this terminal is basically running every command inside my Ubuntu. And from here, most of the rest of experience is similar to what you get in a Linux or a Mac machine. So one exception is that the open folder the experience doesn't allow you to create a new folder here. So I need to create the folder first, and then I can open it in the VS Code extension, in VS Code. So now that I created this folder, most of the rest of experience is similar to what we get in other platforms. So it's very interesting that we have this VS Code here, but it's actually running everything inside that Ubuntu. If you are doing that in VS Code, you already know most of the experience. If you don't, there's a bit of initial mind mapping to know what is happening on your Windows, what is happening on the WSL. But the overall thing is that everything is basically working almost perfectly. So once I have this folder open, I can initialize an empty project. And from here, I can compile and deploy and have the sandboxes and everything, which is all going to happen in my Ubuntu machine. So I start by copying some contracts here. So I have this data types contract here. One tiny improvement that we made is that now if you double click the contract here, it will open it for you, and you don't need to go to the Explorer sidebar to do that. And we can compile this contract, but before doing that, we need to install the Lego plugin, because it's a Lego contract. Once that is installed, we can compile that, and it gives us this data types artifact that I can deploy to my machine, to my sandbox. Before that, I need to start my sandbox, and to do that, I need to install the FlexTesa plugin. now this is enabled here. I can start my sandbox. Let's close a few of these. Once that is running, you can see that we have some implicit accounts and no smart contracts. In order to be able to deploy the contract or originate the contract, we need the Taquito plugin. Now I have it enabled, and you know that we need an initial storage to be able to originate that contract. So I'm going to copy this and so basically our contract storage needs an int. That's why I create a default storage that has an int value in it. And now if I go back to here, I should be able to deploy my contract to the sandbox. So you see that the entire end-to-end experience on Windows and WSL is mostly similar and smooth. The next thing that I'm going to show is to go deeper into the Michelin editor that we have. So this contract has a set of entry points that each has a separate and data type as its argument. And if we want to invoke that entry point, the flow in VS Code extension is that a Michelin editor, a GUI Michelin editor will be open for us, where we can enter the values and set the value for that entry point graphically. And we get validation, and we get other tools that are needed for that specific data type. So for this one, what you get is a list of natural numbers. And of course, if you enter anything that is not a natural nat, you're getting errors, or like if you enter a negative number, you still get an error. But if you enter a set of nice natural numbers, your validation will be passed. Here we also have the ability to reorder this list, because lists are ordered in Michelson. And once you or remove any item, once you're happy with the value you're passing to the entry point, you can invoke this entry point. And by invoking it, you get this nice summary of what has happened. So basically, you see your parameter as a JSON representation of the Michelin, and the result of the invocation. So if you want, you can go back to the contract and expand the operation. Now you have an additional operation here, which is your transaction. You can see the additional details about your transaction here, which is a JSON representation of all the details that usually people want to know about their operation. So you can see, for instance, that who sent this operation, which is which is our default account in the project config, and all the other things that that you usually need to know about an operation. So let's have a look at a few of other editor possibilities. So for a pair, it will be simply showing inputs for that pair. So here we need an int and a string. A pair of pair is more complex, of course. It shows them as as pairs of double things. So it's like it could be shown flat, but now it actually shows them in a nested pair. Then this is a more complex data type. It's a list, but each item of the list is a pair of string and int. Again, it's like you can get the GUI that is expected for here. We have more kinds of things that are more complex. So for a set of string, you can enter a few strings, but there's this and so if I enter something that is not properly sorted, so Michelin sets have to be unique and sorted. So if something is not sorted, you get a lower priority kind of a validation error that tells you this is basically each item is valid, but the set needs to be sorted, and clicking on sort will sort them, and now it is possible to invoke the entry point using that set. A similar thing for requirement for sorting is there for maps. So the keys of a map need to be sorted, so you get a similar experience for maps. And also, one thing to know is that the last invocation creates a file in the artifacts folder, which is the temp file that is used for the invocation. And you can see the Michelson representation of your data in here. It can be useful to if you want to have to copy that Michelson representation, but also if you want to see additional information, you can toggle the diagnostics view, which shows you the data type and the JSON representation plus the Michelin representation of the representation of the value that you have entered here. So yeah, this is the overall experience here. It should be working for any type of kind of data type that you have. And so you don't need to enter values by hand or need to know how to represent a value in Michelson or Michelin. A graphical user interface will be created for you to do that. Yeah, that's all. Is there any question?
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for the demo, Ali. I think Jeff's going to jump in here with a couple questions.
Hey, thanks, Ali, for that demo. That was really cool. Yeah, some questions, and I'm going to role play as sort of a new user to a certain extent. So, and perhaps you could share your screen while we're going through those as well, so we can kind of talk around the UI.
Yeah.
So, I saw earlier you had like a list of contracts and these entry points, and so is it right that these entry points these are all entry points or methods that are implemented on a particular contract? So, and can you talk through a little bit more technically, like what's actually happening here? You talked about a Michelin editor, and so Michelin is like a little bit of an inside baseball term that we use here in Tezos. So maybe we can try and explain it like in 5 to try and connect with users that are new to Tezos.
Yeah, so maybe the best way to talk about that would be to go back to the initial language that we have, instead of talking about Michelin, we can talk about the data types in our Lego contract. So as you see, the parameter in our Lego contract could be any of these things, and any one of them has a name plus a data type.
Okay,
And
so each of these parameters is corresponds to like a method, if you will, on the smart contract, and they all have different function signatures. Is that right?
exactly, yeah.
Okay, neat.
So yeah, it might make sense to not bother users with the terms of Michelson or Michelin. So basically, when you have your contract in your favorite language, it's going to have a number of methods or entry points, and those can have their own parameters, which is a data type. And once you deploy that, you see all those entry points here, and then you can, once you invoke them, the GUI, it's generated for you to be able to enter that value. So for instance, if you see here, this entry point 15 needs a map of string to int. So if we go here, we can open that and see that it is creating a map from string to int. And you can open a few, create a few entries in here, and
Okay,
enter
got it.
value. Yeah.
So this is, I suppose this is particularly useful for exploration of a smart contract without having to write code. So this user interface we see here is being generated dynamically from the data type that has been originally written in Lego, but I understand it's generated from the Michelson data type.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay, cool. And so then, can you talk us through a little bit about what happens when you click invoke entry point? Does that actually send? Does that actually call this operation or this method on your smart contract in your sandbox?
Exactly. So if we go back to the output from our from Taqueria, we see that it has actually called that entry point, sent the invocation command to our contract, and shows us a summary of the result of that invocation. If there are errors or whatever, which we can see them here. And after that, it is added to the list of operations in our contract, which we can see here. And of course, we can show additional information about that. So yeah, exactly. It is sent to the sandbox and to your smart contract, and if successful, goes to the history of its operation. If
Okay,
I have answered your question.
So this is, so when you go into, you're getting this form dynamically generated that corresponds to it. You can fill it in, just point and click, and then you click invoke entry point, which is that generates an operation with the parameters that you've entered, and then that gets forged into an operation, and it gets signed, I presume. So what's happening? How is Taqueria signing this operation that gets injected into the sandbox at this point? Is that from an account in the configuration or something?
So that comes from the config.json, and actually for this sandbox, it's an in-memory signer basically, and it uses these keys and the secret key to sign it.
Okay. And these secret keys are contextual only for a sandbox, so they're not really of importance. They don't correspond to accounts on testnets or anything like that. It looks like we've lost. I think Ali has frozen there. But yeah, that was I think I got pretty much to the end of my questions anyway. That was super neat, and it's nice to see that we can, based on Ali's work, a user can be explorative with a smart contract without having to jump straight into writing in code, and then execute, like send those operations and have them injected, and then observe the effects under the operations directly in Taqueria's extension. So cool.
Yeah, writing in VS Code is great. Like traditionally, you would have to originate to a test net and then use a something like BCD to explore it and play with the entry points. So this provides like a workflow that uses a local TZKT index or instance, which is indexing the local flex test sandbox, and you get a graphical representation of everything that's occurring, operations, contracts that have been originated, all the entry points on those contracts, and then you can start interacting it.
Yeah, and so I understand that at the moment there's some limitations that we can't connect the VS Code extension, Taqueria extension to, for example, GhostNet, but that's something that we want to do in the future. So for a user wanting to explore a smart contract on a testnet or mainnet, they might be able to use this feature in Taqueria to connect to an arbitrary contract for those sort of explorative purposes, and that'll be quite neat.
Exactly. Yeah, that's about a month away, so keep an eye out for that.
Very nice.
All right, well, let's jump back into questions with Jimmy and John. I had a couple more questions about SmartPy. Are you there, Jimmy?
Sure. Yeah, I'm here. Hi.
Hi guys.
Hey, John. Hi.
I was just wondering, so the plugin, obviously, the IDE that you just showed and calling of entry points, that'll work, I guess, with the SmartPy plugin as well. Also, can you call entry points from the command line like the same way he was doing using the GUI?
One sec. That might be a question for Ali. We have not, because this feature, this workflow is pretty recent. It was done last week, so we haven't thought about integrating it with the IDE yet. Yeah, but
the Taquito plugin does have a method called call, I believe, transfer. Which is an alias for call, and so you're able to actually like pass a command line argument that has all of the
great.
So yeah, John, you could I think SmartPy, you could you could target, you can do a compilation target, you can do expression compilation target too. So if you want to define if you want to call a contract with a parameter, I suppose you could write it in SmartPy, compile it down to Michelson, and then you can use the Taquito plugin, specifically the call task to invoke a parameter of the SmartPy contract of the contract.
Okay.
And the if I'm not mistaken, the call or transfer subcommand in TAC, the CLI, as well as the functionality that Ali was demonstrating, those features are bottom up from Michelson. So while Ali was showing off a Lego smart contract, which was a high level language that those contracts are written in, Taqueria is operating from the Michelson data types up. So it should work just the same for Michelson that's produced by SmartPy, or Michelson from anywhere, be it handwritten Michelson or coming from something like another language, high level language such as Archetype or SCAML and so forth.
Yep, exactly.
Great. Yeah.
Awesome. Do you have any more questions about the SmartPy plugin, John?
Trying to think. No, not immediately, but I'll let you know. Thank you.
Yeah, we encourage all the feedback we can get from users. Now, John, if you were open to maybe discussing a little bit just about your workflow with SmartPy.
Right.
Developing with it for a while now. Some of the challenges you faced and how you might think Taqueria could fit in and solve some of those issues.
Right. Well, yeah, currently, I just wrote a bunch of bash scripts to essentially do what Taqueria is doing. And it's not very flexible at all. A little bit of hard coding of file, of contract names and things like that. And we could certainly use a tool like this, especially when trying to show other users how to do all this stuff.
Right.
The GUI plugin would be a great help to us. And yeah, like I believe we could switch over to the Taqueria Smart Pipe plugin right away according to what you guys showed today. So I think I'm gonna have to make that priority now.
Awesome. I'm excited to hear that.
Cool.
Yeah.
In terms of your development workflow, I know that Talent Network is a separate chain, which is based on Tezos. What's your flow like for using? Do you have the equivalent of a test net, or are you doing development against Flex Tessa?
Yeah, well, we do have a test net where we do, before we deploy our changes to production, we test them all there. But however, I also run a local network or a local test net, I guess, by basically running a Docker Compose and Docker system to run the test net, and that's worked fairly well, like locally, but could definitely use better tooling there. So I'm looking forward to see what you guys have for Flex Test. I'll admit I really haven't dug into it yet, but I'm going to as soon as possible.
That's good to hear. We've, in setting out and the early days of Taqueria, one of our goals and one of our observations from the ecosystem was that in order to compile smart contracts and deploy them and so on, every development team and every development individual seemed to be reinventing the wheel to get to tackle these common tasks, which seemed very wasteful. And in addition to that, it was also, there's quite a lot of inertia and friction for one developer or one developer team to hand their project off to another developer or to a tester, because these scripts that we typically write as developers, they serve our purposes, and they become idiosyncratic to ourselves, but it doesn't really build equity in this is how I start and run a Tezos project. So hopefully, these Taqueria's CLI and the VS Code extension and the UI starts to become more familiar across teams, and that makes these things more portable and easy to get up and running with.
Yeah, we also have some improvements coming down the pipeline for the way that environments work. Having the notion of a current environment and being able to switch between environments will update all the targets, all your networks. It will pull in the state that's required. And if you're a DApp developer, it'll also update the aliases. So immediately you should have the ability to target a test net and have everything deploy to the test net, and then your DApp refer to that test net without having to actually do any manual coding or adjustments. Great, thanks for the discussion, John.
I have a quick question for John. So John, you mentioned that the workflow, this new workflow that we showed, is very similar to the one that you currently have. The ones that you currently have was full of it required a lot of setups. Like you have to just set up these, all these bash scripts and blah blah blah. So if you were to start anew, would you use our Smart Pipe plugin? Would it benefit you? Or
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
okay.
It's superior to what I'm using currently, and there was no tech when I started working on this project, so I kind of had to come up with my own solution at the time. But it's not very flexible, and yeah, tech certainly would be what I start with now. We're already using Taquito extensively, that's something I should have mentioned, is that, you know, my scripts are using calling Node.js that calls Taquito to do a lot of the functionality that we require. So yeah, TAC will fit right into our current tool set, definitely.
Okay, that's great to hear. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, there's one thing I got to admit, I
Right.
use JetBrains products a lot, right? And you know, I know you're using Visual Studio there, but I guess is there any plan to maybe do any plugin on that side of JetBrains tooling, or I guess it's a little bit of a lift.
Right.
Yeah, it's not something that's currently on the backlog, but it's something that has been discussed before. I was
Nice.
interested to get some feedback from users about what their environment is.
Yeah, and the largest, like, kind of our understanding, the largest addressable market here is VS Code users at this point. And then VS Code is like a pretty, like, so there's value for our efforts are valuable to most, but it's also a great place for us to break the trail, and then when the VS Code extension is well established, it'll be easier to re-implement our user experience and models and such in JetBrains, and that whether we do that internally, depending, or we at least want to democratize this so that if a user wants to have some of these experiences in their editor of choice, there shouldn't be friction or barriers for them to write their own plugin. So if you're a Vim user, hope maybe from the ecosystem a Taqueria Vim plugin might crop up, and then for JetBrains as well. And depending on you know the value proposition, and if it really pushes the needle, we might take on some of that work internally. But we got we got more valuable features to ship before then.
Understood. Yeah. Great. Thanks.
Yeah, and John, just wanted to clarify: are you using Flex Tessa? Is that what your testnet is based on, or do you have a separate?
I'm not totally sure. I mean, we run our own network with our own protocol, and but I've been told that Tessa is the way to use Taqueria for this, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, but so I mean, Taqueria, like, it has a plugin for Flex Tessa, which makes spinning up Flex Tessa sandboxes very easy. With that said, Taqueria treats a network as, you know, an RPC, and so it's there shouldn't be any issue with you creating a custom testnet or a custom network within your Taqueria's config. So the friction there, it's not a requirement to use Flex Tessa. Just like it's not, and so you can use this with GhostNet or any of the future nets or MondayNet, or you can spin up your own private network, and provided that it walks like a Tezos RPC and it talks like a Tezos RPC, it should work just fine.
Awesome. Yeah, Ali built the integration with the indexer. Do we have the flexibility to be able to target another local sandbox at the moment? Or is that a feature we would need to develop?
Is the question that can we run multiple sandbox on the same local?
Well, John uses like a custom network, so he's not using Flex Tessa yet, but it would be great for him to be able to index against that.
We can. It's not, there's no from my understanding, there shouldn't be any kind of technical barrier into that. So we should be able to support indexing non-Flex Tessa local sandboxes as well. It's a good thing to consider. Yeah.
And it's an interesting feature request. So if you have a TZKT, if you do have an existing TZKT instance operating within your sort of private net testnet, we should be able to allow Taqueria to be able to connect to that, as opposed to using the TZKT indexer that's bundled with the local Flex Tessa experience. So that's actually good feedback, and something we can maybe consider for the future.
Yeah, that can be part of that, targeting a public test or indexers, which is a feature coming next month.
Yeah, we need to have it in mind that people might not only need to target public TZKTs, but also TZKTs that they have been managing. So it's a nice feature to implement in that area.
Oh, I see John's back now. Hey, John, we lost you for a second there.
Yeah, sorry guys. Yeah.
No worries. So we're getting close to time here. Was there any final questions or things you'd like to mention?
Not for me.
Well, it's great to have you here, John, and getting real life users on the office hours. The point of this is to show off what we've been building, but also get for us to get engagement with users such as yourself. And yeah, we're looking forward to far more of this.
Thanks, Jev. Yeah, it's been great to be here. I wish I was a little more prepared, but yeah, very good. Thanks for the invite, Houston.
Yeah, it was, thanks for joining. These are meant to be conversational, so it's not too scripted. We want to get some real life feedback and just have a nice flowing conversation and do demos and show off the new features we have and get early feedback. So we're building Taqueria for our end users, like very much a feature and user-based led project. So we want to make sure we're connecting with as many real-world users as possible and being very on top of like taking that feedback into consideration and building features that are solving real-world problems for users. So, yeah, really excited to have you join us today, and we're excited to get the SmartPy plugin into your hands and get some real-world feedback from that. And yeah, if
right away,
any
right away.
Awesome. Yeah, you can keep in touch with our development team if you have any questions. You can always reach out on Discord or Slack.
Great.
And to any other viewers watching, if anybody would like to come join future discussions, you can get a hold of us through the Discord channel and send you an invite link. We welcome anybody to come and join just to have be part of the discussion, ask particular questions, give us feedback. The more the merrier.
Okay,
Great.
thank you all.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.